What's up everyone, my name is Gothix and today I'll be doing another reaction video that was highly requested by all of you guys. And today we're going to be tackling the 1984 interview featuring Yuri Bezmenov, if I'm saying that correctly. Yuri is an ex-KGB agent, and the actual interview that people were suggesting is around an hour long. So for the sake of time, I'm just gonna do this 6-minute clip that I found on YouTube, and it's literally titled "A Warning to America." Reminder, again, this is from 1984. So I am ready. I'm very curious to see what this is about. So let's do this.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is...
He just said psychological warfare. I don't know about you, but this year I've at least on a few occasions have expressed how I feel like people, like I get this impression that people are losing their minds is a better way to put it. And to me, that would be a perfect opportunity for someone to take advantage of people who may be suffering mentally or maybe going through something psychologically. Mental warfare. Okay. Let me let him continue really quick.
To change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into...
He just said Marxism.
The soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students, without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him.
Facts don't care about feelings. Whoa, okay. This explains why when I research a specific topic, I find my answer. I try to debate someone, give them my sources, right? Here are the facts. This is what you look at. It's like constant deflection. Like, that doesn't matter to me because, and then they'll pull out some type of whataboutism from their back pocket. Okay.
Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom.
Okay. That's funny because a few times here on this channel, during my live streams particularly, I'll talk about how, I feel like a lot of people won't wake up. And I feel like people won't actually wake up until something traumatic happens. Or at least that's what happened to me. I started paying attention to the media and started paying attention more to the lies that were being spread around politics when something traumatic happened. And that traumatic thing was BLM and COVID and being in the house all the time, not having anything to do. And and that's when I started researching and realizing that, wow, okay, not everything is black and white here. Obviously, there's a lot of misinformation being spread around. I find it interesting that he's saying that. Okay, let me keep going here.
When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth.
Okay. Wait, okay. All right. Let me not jump the gun here. Let me just listen to the rest of this.
To destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking with every second. The disaster.
Okay, so I wrote down some notes and I had to take a few minutes to just process what this guy was saying. And if you, unless you've been living under a rock, there is no denying that all of the things that this guy just mentioned has been happening in America for the last few months, at least the last few months. Although I do agree that when it comes to demoralization, for an example, I agree that it's been happening in America for some time. I've seen it, I've felt it. There's a shift in the way that people are thinking. You know, for example, people in school, like the younger generation of kids that are just coming out of school, look at communism as a good thing. Whereas when I went to school, those words would never come out of my mouth, right? So I feel like it's been happening for some time. So let's actually talk about demoralization very quickly. Demoralization, in the context of warfare, national security, and law enforcement, is a process in which the objective is to erode morale among enemy combatants and or non-combatants. Propaganda as a tool of demoralization refers to influencing opinion through significant symbols, through means such as rumors, stories, pictures, reports, and or other means of social communication. Other means of political and psychological warfare, such as deception, disinformation, or agents of influence. So, things that come to mind when I think of this. The Black Lives Matter movement. The narrative did not make sense. The whole narrative of more black people are being hunted and killed in the streets does not make sense. I would present arguments and data to people that opposed my position, and I would get brushed off of spreading my own disinformation or being devil's advocate or just not, caring about black people. The other thing that comes to mind is mainstream media and how a lot of the times they'll put out propaganda or disinformation to sway public opinion. This is not news to anyone. This happens on most mainstream media outlets, regardless if it's on the left or the right, but it happens a lot. I think CNN is one of the most guilty of doing this. Other than that, with demoralization and propaganda using that, Joe Biden has appointed a anti-free speech and a propaganda strategist to work under him. His name is Richard Stengel, if I'm pronouncing that right. And this guy is very honest and very vocal about the fact that he thinks the First Amendment needs some tweaking. And you know what? Take a look at this video. Let it speak for itself.
There's another word for master narratives. It's called history. Basically, every country creates their own narrative story. And you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population. And I don't necessarily think it's that awful. And this idea of a news cartel, I mean, I was editor of Time in 2012 during that election, and I remember, you know, you're competing against cartels and everybody. I remember being on a panel with the then editor of the New York Times, who said, it's really hard to break through these days. This is the editor of the New York Times saying it's hard to break through. I wanted to jump off the platform. Like, what's it like for the rest of everybody? So, I mean, there are cartels, but cartels don't have hegemony like they used to. The gentleman right there, last question.
I don't think you want to address the issue in terms of understanding what happened in the world. Because what is happening in America is what the United States flipped on the global south and in the third world, which we live with for many, many years in terms of a master narrative that was and still is propaganda.
You know what? I hate last questions. Don't you? I usually just want to end something before the last question. But at any rate, I want to thank this fantastic panel here today. And I do want to say, I actually think, I mean, the talk about optimism, I mean, the optimism is all of you there figuring out how to teach your students about this and using some of the techniques and some of the sources that we've talked about here today. And I hope you're successful. Thank you very much.
The thing that I need people to understand about free speech is if you restrict it, you're also restricting information. So, for example, I just told you that Joe Biden appointed a propaganda strategist to his team. If I had my free speech limited, you would never know that. And anything that were to come out of the White House or come out of a press event or come out of mainstream media would just be truth to you, and you wouldn't even question it. The thing that's really frustrating to me about that is also the consumers, the people that are consuming the propaganda. Again, this is no fault to you, but people that are quick to shut down conversations, even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, it also plays a big role into this whole situation that we're in. Imagine if I had information that could save your life, but because you didn't agree with my position, I wouldn't be able to give you that information. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't know how to end this video. Everything that Yuri talked about in his interview literally mirrors what I've been thinking these past few months, specifically with the psychological warfare. And I hope, one thing that I hope people can take away from my video is learn to be more comfortable having conversations with people that you disagree with. People need to start paying attention. People need to start waking up, and people need to stop focusing on superficial things and start paying attention to things that are rooted in truth, not feeling, truth. So if I show you data, or I show you statistics, or I show you studies, I need you to actually look at them. Look at them instead of passing them off as propaganda, because that line of thinking is why we're in the position that we're in right now. That's all I gotta say. Everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you want more, and yeah, stop watching the news.